Good afternoon and welcome to our presentation on bedtime routines. I'm just going to jump right in with some housekeeping items. I do have the audio and video disabled for everyone. So if you need any clarification or have any questions, please use the chat. We will answer questions as we go along. There will be a handout with all of this information and more distributed to everybody after this is completed. So you can just sit back and take in the information and ask any questions that you have. If you are having any concerns, please use the hand button on your chat feature, and one of us will do our best to help you. So here we go. So it's important to note that when bedtime is stressful, it actually makes it harder for your child to fall asleep. So nighttime rituals can really help children transition to a more relaxed state and help them feel in control by helping them to know what to expect. So nighttime routines and bedtime, I know as a parent, can be very stressful. As parents, we look forward to our children going to bed, honestly, to get some time to ourselves or maybe some time with our partner. And we also worry about our children getting the rest that they need. But we also have to recognize that bedtime can be stressful for our little ones as well. It's a big and difficult transition. We as adults even still sometimes have difficulty getting to sleep. Kids are no different. They just don't know what to do. They don't understand why. They also might have a lot of fears that arise at this time. Fear of the dark is a pretty common one. They also could have just like a fear of missing out. So like they know mom and dad or siblings perhaps are still awake and they have to go to sleep. Well, what are they missing out on? If these are affecting your family, it's probably time to look at a bedtime routine or look at what you're doing and make some adjustments. Because like I said, when bedtime is stressful, it makes it harder for your kids to fall asleep. So the biggest piece that we need to look at in terms of nighttime rituals is helping them transition into that relaxed state, so that and providing that predictability so that they know what to expect, so that they can ease into sleep. You might be surprised, though, that what you're already doing might be on the right track, or might only need small adjustments to make it successful for you and your family. So it could be a lot easier than you think. So what is a bedtime routine? So a bedtime routine is a series of tasks that are completed in a specific order to get your child ready for bed and cue them that it's sleep time. So bedtime routines are all about making your child feel safe and secure and easing the transition from awake to asleep. So we need to really focus on these two key areas when we're looking at building our bedtime routine. So you're probably already doing some of these things, but there are some things that are commonly forgotten. So we want to make sure that we kind of reinforce those things. So the first thing we want to consider when we look at a bedtime routine is when our child is going to sleep. So we need to look at, okay, what does our life require? What time in the morning do we need to get up? What time do we get home? What time can bedtime be realistically? But also looking at developmentally what their sleep needs are. So making sure that your expectation of how much your child is going to sleep is not far-fetched. So if you're, 10-year-old, you're expecting them to sleep 13 hours a day, it's probably an unrealistic sleep expectation. So that could be part of why you're having bedtime battles, is because they're just not tired enough, because they're getting more than the sleep that they need. So we want to look at, I've given you kind of the outlines of the sleep expectations, that the Pediatric Association has outlined for us. Take a look at that. Look at your life, wake up times, when bedtime can be. and how much your child should be sleeping roughly. And then maybe adjust bedtime, and that might be the only thing you need to be able to ease your bedtime battles, but usually it's just the first step. So what should I include in my bedtime routine? Many of these things we already do because they're just generally things that we have to do to get ready for bed, such as, putting on our pajamas, or getting changed into whatever we sleep in. Maybe brushing our teeth is, we just do that. But there's some of these things that we might not do, so that our child may need to help ease them into sleepiness. So maybe reading a story before bed is one of those things that helps your child relax. And maybe it's not. Every child is different. Same with the sleep expectations. There's lots of things we can tell you, but you know your child best. So choose the things that are going to help your child get ready for bed and cue them that it's sleep time. Help that wind down process. We want to really focus here on positive sleep associations. So we want things that help cue our brains that it's time to go to sleep. So things that help your child fall asleep on their own. So like I said, things that help them get to that sleepy state. And it's very important when we are looking at what tasks, what items we're going to include in our bedtime routine, that we find an order in which we complete them and we stick to it. That really helps with that brain connection for sleep time. If every night we bath, brush our teeth, story, lullaby, change into PJs, say goodnight. If we do it in that exact same order every night, over time, your child's brain will learn that, oh, when we have a bath, next we brush our teeth, and that means I need to start calming down and time to go to sleep, right? So it cues our brains, that pattern, that predictability, which over time will help your child go right to sleep. It is important to note that as your child ages, that the routine will evolve over time. So the routine you do with your toddler is not going to be the same routine you do with your teenager. The expectations are different in terms of the amount of sleep, but also the amount of independence that they might have. So for example, when your toddler has a bedtime routine, probably most, if not all, of the items in that list are going to be completed by you as the parent or supported by you as the parent. Meanwhile, the teenager probably doesn't need any of your help to go to bed. They might still have the same task. They might still have a snack, brush their teeth, read, change, and go to bed, right? Like they might still have those same tasks. It just might, the level of independence might be different there. So like I said, your toddler probably needs you to do all of those things for them. Your teenager probably does all those by themselves. The only thing they might do is come say goodnight if you're lucky. So yeah, your child might start out with you supporting, ease away. So an example of that would be reading. So as your toddler, you might read them a book. Your younger child might read you a book. Your teenager might read independently. So again, it's the same task, just evolving with the age and expectations that go along with that. So some key items here in terms of what to do and what not to do in order to, get the most success out of your bedtime routine. So set a time and stick to it. So there can be some flexibility with this, obviously, if you accommodate for life, such as holidays and special events, but those should be the exception to the rule. So they should be happening less often than not. So if bedtime's at 7, you stick to that. Bedtime's at 7, unless there's something big going on. That really again helps with that positive sleep association that I was talking about. your child will learn to expect that. Their body, their brain will learn to go along with that. The next thing that you might want to do is give a warning. So again, this can look very differently depending on the age or ability of your child. So this could be a verbal warning, 5 minutes till bedtime, a timer. It could be a first then visual or an association. It could be a visual schedule. There's lots of different ways that this could look, but it really helps your child to not fight you as hard when it's time to start that bedtime routine. So in terms of association, these things will solidify as your bedtime routine continues. So if the first item on your bedtime routine is a bath, for example, over time, that association will be created in your child's brain so that when you turn on the tap for the tub to run the bath, that sound, that action will send a cue to your child's brain that, oh, it's bedtime. And that will along with the predictability of the following items, cue their brain to switch modes into a calmer state. So those are those positive sleep associations I was talking about. So these don't happen immediately; they take time. So don't fret that the second night this isn't happening. These do take time, but that's why it's so important to be consistent. In the order, in the time, in all of those things, so that we can create those sleep associations. And the last tip I have for success is to offer choices. So often kids don't like bedtime because they feel they have no choice in the matter. You're forcing them to go to bed, when the time to go to bed, all of those things. So an easy way to help with that is give them choices. So they may not get to choose what time or whether they do or don't go to bed, but maybe they can choose what pajamas they're going to wear or what book they're going to read. Those kind of things can help engage the child and entice the child to participate more willingly in the bedtime routine. In terms of some things to avoid doing, a big thing for many kids is to avoid stimulating activities for roughly 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. So things like TV, video games, talking on the phone, roughhousing, those type of things. And just be aware that some kids are more affected by these things than others. So some kids, you could watch TV right until bedtime routine and they won't be affected by it. And others will be greatly affected by it and need more like an hour before bedtime without those things. So just this might be some trial and error with your child to figure out kind of where and how they're affected by these things, but just be something to think about when you're looking at your bedtime routine. And again, be careful of poor sleep associations. So we talked a lot about positive sleep associations, but there is poor sleep association. So things like rocking or rubbing their back to sleep. So children who are able to fall asleep independently are more likely to fall asleep more easily in the night if they wake, and have healthier sleep habits throughout childhood. So it's a really good foundation to set as early as you can to kind of work towards them falling asleep independently. It really kind of sets them up for success in the future in terms of their sleep habits. Now, if this works for you and you're fine with that and you're not having issues with your child waking up in the night or anything like that, you're not struggling with your bedtime or nighttime practices, and you like rocking your child to sleep, all the power to you. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But if it is an issue for you, this might be something that you want to look at more carefully. And then lastly, don't drag bedtime out. Kids, like I mentioned, fear missing out, so they call on you for another drink, another cuddle, to go to the bathroom, they need a snack. We've all been there, right? So we try to build those into our routine where possible to eliminate the need for your child to request them. So if every night they're asking you for a drink of water 5 minutes after you put them to bed, then maybe before bed we have a drink of water. maybe we build that into the routine so that when the request comes, it can be stopped in its tracks, so that we're not dealing with this constant coming out. So again, we can kind of build that positive routine. It is also important to note that some kids will cry for a few minutes as they settle down to sleep, no matter what you do. And it's okay. Some kids just need that, and that's fine. The things you want to look out for is if they are getting more wound up, kind of like sobbing. That's different. If your kid is kind of whining or talking to themselves, or crying a little bit, but getting quieter, winding down, that's fine. They're self-soothing. They're finding a way to wind themselves down to sleep. If your child is getting worked up, standing, getting up, getting louder, then we need to go in and see that everything is okay. But it's important to just kind of let you know as a parent, that's not something to feel guilty of if your child cries quietly a little bit to go to sleep. So how do we create a bedtime routine? So kind of going off what I've already talked about, first we want to reflect on what we're currently doing at bedtime. Think about all the things, think about what kind of consistency we have or don't have, all of those things. Then we want to look at sleep expectations, like I mentioned. So think about your sleep expectations and adjust bedtimes as needed based on your child's developmental sleep needs and your lifestyle. Adjust. So think about what needs to be adjusted in your current bedtime routine. What tasks or items or practices are healthy and can stay, and what things need to be adjusted or need to be removed or changed. Then we want to look at what we have left of our current routine and decide on what additional tasks might be useful or helpful to our child to include to help them relax. And then decide on what order we're going to complete them in every night. Then you're going to want to implement your new routine. You're going to want to be sure to stay patient and consistent, because this isn't an instant fix. It does take time to see kind of the benefits of this. You might have a few days where things are worse before they get better, as if you've had very little routine, your child might be like, what the heck is going on? So just again, be patient and consistent. Now, just a note, if your child is still of napping age, roughly 0 to 4, depending on your child, you'll want to have a mini version of your routine that you use at nighttime for daytime sleeps. So this might be kind of 2 to 3 tasks that translate well for daytime sleep that you'll still complete with your child in the same order. You may need to work with your daycare on this if your child takes most of their naps in a childcare setting. But because it's only 2 to 3 things, usually it's something that you can kind of adopt what they're doing, or vice versa, depending on your childcare situation. So for example, perhaps you won't brush their teeth or change them into pajamas, but you probably will still have a potty break or change their diaper and sing them a lullaby and put them into bed. So taking out the 2 or 3 things that aren't applicable to daytime sleep, but still maintaining the things that are, just kind of, like I said, kind of a mini version to help, again, with that consistency and helping your child create those sleep associations. So takeaways. The things that I really want you guys to take away from today is that every child and family are different. You need to look at your child and their needs and your family needs. Don't compare, because every child really is different, and what works for you may not work for somebody else, and vice versa. The next kind of big thing that I've been kind of driving home is to focus on those positive sleep associations. That's kind of the crux of this whole thing, is to create those pathways in your child's brain that cue them for sleep. Next is to let your routine evolve over time. Like I mentioned, as your child ages, as your child changes, you want to evolve with them and make those adjustments as time goes on. Also, keep things simple. Bedtime routines do not need to be complicated. Um, they could be just, half a dozen things that you complete in the same order every night. And most of those things are going to be things that you would normally do anyways to get your child ready for bed. So again, keep things simple. Generally, we talk about 15 to 20 minutes is kind of usually roughly what a bedtime routine takes. So again, brushing your teeth, going potty, all getting changed, all those things take about that time anyways. Um, so yeah, and then finally, consistency is key. So again, using the same order every night, same bedtime every night, and just that repetition and predictability is really what's going to drive things home for your child and make them feel the most safe and secure to be able to move into sleep time. But ultimately, it's not about what you do in your bedtime routine. It's not about the specific tasks, but how you do it. Remember that your goal is to make your child feel safe and secure and to help them get to a state of calm to allow them to easily transition to sleep. So make sure that you're calm, make sure that the environment that you're creating or allowing is calm. Like I said, no roughhousing, no TV, those kind of things. Use a calming voice. Try not to be stressed yourself because those things your child picks up on and it'll make it harder for them to fall asleep. So again, how you do bedtime is a lot more important than the items you include in your bedtime routine. So that's it for us. So I will end this here and then I'll answer questions for anybody who has any.